Hi, I'm Greg Dell with Dell Disability Lawyers here with Alex Palamara. And Alex, we're going to discuss some disability appeal tips for people who have been denied by Voya Financial. And Voya is a company, Voya Financial's company has been around. They've, I believe, taken over back in the day, Reliastar, also ING, but now the brand is Voya Financial. And I know you've handled a lot of appeals with Voya. They're not the biggest company out there, but they've fallen into the top 20 of the world's largest group disability insurance companies. So in this video, let's give some tips for people who've been denied by Voya and in terms of the steps they should take to file a successful appeal. And what's the first thing that you think a person should do if they've been denied by Voya?
The biggest thing is not to appeal willy-nilly right off the bat. If you get a denial letter from Voya, the first thing you need to do is, after contacting us, but if you don't contact us, you need to get a copy of that claim file. The claim file is the most important thing you need to do before doing any appeal, because the insurance company is tasked under the ERISA laws to create this claim file document, which is all the documentation that you've submitted, all the documentation your doctors have submitted, all the documentation they've compiled, and all the documentation that they've created on your case has to be put into this claim file. Now, if you get denied disability benefits, they have to give you a copy of the claim file within 30 days upon 30 days request. If they don't, they get in trouble. But they have to give it to you, and why you need this claim file is because all that documentation is in there. Anything they're hanging their hat on to deny your case is going to be in there. All the reviews that they're utilizing to deny your case is going to be in there. And you have to find those reviews and figure out why they think they're justified in denying your case. And if you're truly disabled, that justification is going to be some BS in there. We've got to figure out what that BS is and prove that BS wrong with the appeal.
I love when you say that. When you go through the claim file, which actually I think the claim file is one of the advantages of ERISA, even though we don't often say there's advantages to ERISA, but it is an advantage of the ERISA law, which governs all group disability employer provided benefits, because unlike other cases where if it's not governed by ERISA, we have to go through discovery and say, give us what you have, and then they argue, no, this is work product, this is attorney-client privilege. But in ERISA, they have to give you everything. Every little communication they had, any supervisor's notes, any conversations they had back and forth with doctors, any phone calls they have with the claim. So everything's there. It's like open book. And if it's not there, then it doesn't exist. Any bills they paid to doctors, things like that are all supposed to be in there. So at least you're starting at a point after a denial when you get this claim file. And keep in mind, this claim file can be a couple hundred pages to thousands and thousands of pages depending upon how long the person's been on claim. But at least when you get this claim file, you know, okay, this is what I'm up against. And now that you have this claim file, what are the most important documents that you seek out when you first get one?
Like I said earlier, obviously the reviews they're relying upon, they're either internal reviews by doctors or nurses that work for Voya, or they go out and hire independent consultants to do a review of the medical records for them. Or sometimes they can do independent medical examinations. I don't really see that very often, but you want to find those reports in there. Other things I'm looking for in the claim file include the SOAP notes. You know, like you were saying earlier, that they document a lot of information in there, whether it's internal emails to each other or just notes on the file. Sometimes you'll find gold in those SOAP notes where someone says, oh, I find this person to be disabled. Here, look at this record. This is telling this person has issues. And they ignore that later on. So if you can find, sometimes you can go through there, you have to go through with a fine-tooth comb and find these little nuggets in there that can support your claim for disability benefits or support the contention that their denial was unreasonable. That's ultimately what you have to prove in any appeal. So I'm looking for the SOAP notes. I'm looking for the any documentation by any of the analysts that have touched the file, and I'm looking for these reviews that they're relying upon or the reports of the doctors.
All right, so in addition to those things, I'm also looking for the medical records that are in the file also, because I want to see, could this appeal be something as basic as they just missed it? They missed an MRI, they missed a doctor's report, they missed an operative report, they missed some kind of diagnostic test. And we'll see that also when we look at their medical review, because their medical reviews are usually a summary of all the medical records they reviewed. But oftentimes we'll find, here's the medical review that you did, here's the actual file, why is this doctor missing particular records? And in a way, that's like low-lying fruit to basically say, hey, look, we sent you these records, but you didn't review them. The other thing I want to see is, did their doctor reach out to the treating doctor? Was there any communication back and forth, or was it the same nonsense of they did reach out with a letter and said, we find your client not to be disabled, and no response from you within 2 days will mean that you agree.
Right.
I mean, you see that in what, 8 out of 10 of your cases, and the doctors are like, it's just another letter from an insurance company that we throw in the garbage or went in our fax machine and we threw away because they're probably sending us a letter telling us how they don't want to pay our medical bills.
Right.
So you lay out your file, right? You go through everything. You pull out their medical reviews, you pull out the records, and now you went through the SOAP notes and you see why they denied the claim. How do you decide what to do next?
Well, I want to see if there's any deficiencies in my client's claim. Maybe medical records are never submitted, or maybe not all the medical records are submitted, or maybe they're missing a doctor or two. Because the insurance company, when you are a claimant with the insurance company and you're not represented by counsel, they're going to say, sign this authorization. We'll go get the medical records for you and then evaluate your case. But it's kind of silly because you're asking the insurance company to prove the case to themselves that they have to pay you thousands of dollars per month. So they're going to do for lack of a better term, a half-assed job proving it to themselves that they have to pay you money. So ultimately you have to remember that it's the claimant's duty to provide those records. Now some of my claimants come to me and they go, oh yeah, the medical records are submitted. I go, how do you know? I go, my doctor submitted them. Well, how do you know your doctor submitted them? Do you have fax confirmation? Do you have an email, a certified letter, anything like that? No, but they said they faxed them. Well, the insurance company will play games that they never got those faxes, and then your doctor doesn't have a fax confirmation. So the only way you can truly know whether your medical records are submitted is by doing it yourself or having us do it for you. But the one thing I'm doing is to see if there's any medical documentation that is not there. If it's not there, then I'm going to get my hands on that medical documentation. I'm going to get my hands on the updated medical documentation. Obviously going to submit that with the appeal. I'm going to see if there's any other testing we can do to further prove this case. Is there any other objective testing, MRIs, CT scans, anything we can do to show my client's complaints? Or is there a functional capacity evaluation? If my client's saying he doesn't have the physical ability to do his or her job anymore, I'm going to send him to a physical therapist to run him through some physical functional testing to show that he or she does not have the ability to perform the requirements of that job. Can I send him to a neuropsychological evaluation? Is there anything else I can do to prove my client's claim? So I'm going to go through that claim file, see what the medical records say, and see if there's any deficiencies. I want to make sure those deficiencies are no longer deficiencies and actually prove our case with any appeal.
Right, and then the other thing people need to know is that when you're doing this appeal, the appeal is going to go back to Voya, but it's not going to go back to the same person at Voya who denied the claim, because that's part of the requirements of ERISA law, that you can't just get a denial and then file a lawsuit, as much as a lot of people say, let's just sue them, I don't trust them at all. We're required by law to go back to the company, but the company has to use a completely new person and a completely new set of medical doctors to review the file. So you really are getting a second bite at the apple and a clean slate, to start from. So I know one of the other things that we do a lot in our appeals is we really need to take this appeal as our opportunity to almost like depose the doctor. This is our trial. Like, we're presenting the testimony of the doctor in support of the claimant. So I know we work in great detail with the doctors to get custom attending physician statements where we could have them sometimes be 4 to 8 pages long, where we're asking the doctor specific questions that are identifying all of the information that we know the Voya claim rep needs to see in order to approve the claim. Somebody who's never done this before, first of all, how does a patient approach the doctor and say, can you fill out an 8-page questionnaire for me with these questions? First of all, someone who doesn't do this doesn't even know the questions to ask the doctor. Second of all, doctors, they want to advocate for their patients. Unfortunately, they're barely getting paid anything now by the insurance companies. They don't have the time necessarily during the day to pay attention to this. When they get approached by the lawyer who's working with them and we're saying, hey, your time is going to be compensated. You're entitled to get paid for this. Please set aside the time. Please let us know your fee. We will pay you for this. It's a business-to-business relationship. If the doctor believes in the claimant, they want to advocate, they want to help. Doctors went into business to keep people healthy and to help them. That's not why they became doctors. So there are some doctors who are caught up in big medicine or big hospitals where they're just like, I don't do paperwork, because they're so fed up with doing it that they don't do it. And that's a whole nother challenge, that we deal with. But super important to get these custom attending physician statements. I think they're the biggest key. The other aspect that I know you do is dealing with the occupation, whether it's an own occupation definition of disability or any gainful occupation. Talk for a minute about how you work with vocational experts to explain to the disability company why this person can't do their occupation.
Right. To prove somebody's own occupation, or to prove that someone's disabled, you have to prove that they're unable to perform the material and substantial duties of their own occupation. So you really have to understand what those material and substantial duties are. And sometimes you can look, the insurance companies typically look to the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. It's kind of a dumbed down system which just basically gives some basic requirements of the job, but they really don't get into the nitty gritty of what's required of most people's occupation. So we have a few different vocational experts that we work with that we ask them for all the various requirements of a job, whether it's cognitive abilities, whether it's physical abilities, whether it's both, doing both at the same time. Mm-hmm. So we make sure we understand what those requirements are. Then we apply our clients' symptoms and restrictions, limitations from those symptoms to the requirements of that occupation. And sometimes a vocational consultant can give us their opinion, whether they think based on those restrictions, limitations, whether the person can perform those duties of those occupations. And we apply it as well in the appeal, because it's our duty to prove, that's what we're proving in our appeal, is whether the person has the ability to perform the duties of of his or her own occupation. So we're applying everything that we have towards those requirements, and lo and behold, more often than not, we're proving our case to the insurance companies. Now, the other complication is that typically after 2 years of benefits under these group policies, like you said earlier, there's an any occupation standard under a lot of these policies. For the first 2 years, you have to prove that you're unable to perform the duties of your own occupation. Then after 2 years, you have to prove that you can't do any gainful occupation. Typically, it takes into account your training, education, and experience. They can't just say you can be people always use the term Walmart greeter, the person just saying hello at the door, because they think anybody can do that if they can sit upright.
Right.
You have to go beyond that for any occupation. So they take into account your training, education, and experience, as well as an income component that sometimes you have to prove that you can make, or they have to prove that you can make 60% of your prior monthly earnings. So we ask these vocational consultants for ideas of what jobs they'd be able to perform based on their training, education, and experience, and based on their restrictions and limitations. And the vocational consultants are very helpful in proving that our clients don't have the ability to perform any qualifying occupation.
So it's a lot of things you've gone through, and it's a timely process. And I know that the law gives you 180 days to do this from the date in which you're denied. And claimants, you started this by saying, don't just go ahead and do an appeal, because often Voya Financial will say, hey, you can go ahead and just request an appeal, and they think it's like calling over the manager at a restaurant to say, hey, I didn't like my meal, will you take it off the bill? And it's that simple. But it's not. It's, because if you don't put in a boatload of additional information, that's it. And the reason people need to understand that is because let's assume someone does their appeal on their own, and they do all the time, and they call us and they go, I did my appeal, I'm denied. That's fine, we'll try to help you. But in this type of work, in the ERISA disability world, once your appeal is denied, you're done. We cannot put in any other evidence. So we are married to what happened before Voya makes their final denial. And we always use the extreme example to say, if they denied you, say, today, and tomorrow, God forbid, you get hit by a bus, and of course you'd be disabled, Voya does not need to take that into consideration. Neither does the court. Not only do they not need to take into consideration, the court will never even know about it. It's totally inadmissible. So the point of that is that everything and anything you can do, without even the rules of evidence applying, need to go into that appeal, and it needs to be done in a strategic and methodical type manner to put the claimant in the best position possible to get approved. So,
100%.
Thank you for sharing these tips about anybody who gets denied by Voya and has to file an appeal. If you're someone out there with a Voya Financial long-term disability policy, feel free to reach out to Alex or myself. No matter where you live in the country, we'll always provide you with an immediate free phone consultation, and we look forward to talking with you to see if we can help you.